Hi y'all, it's Angela. So I've been working on this whole slideshow thing and this video thing, and as we've talked about before, I'm sorry, I just got a haircut and it looks awful. Don't get your haircut with a mask on, folks. Oh my god. So, anyways, today's issue is going to be Nancy Pelosi and what motivates this woman. I was just watching Tim Pool, and he was talking about how Nancy Pelosi is trying to skate the edge of acceptability and so on and so forth. I think we need to have a little discussion about Nancy Pelosi and how she came up and how she came up through Congress and became the powerhouse that she was. Nancy Pelosi was raised by a very political family. Tommy D'Alessandro, excuse me, his son also became mayor, but Tommy was senior. Big Tom was a congressman in the 40s, and then he ran for mayor and won Baltimore City mayor, and he was Baltimore mayor for years and years. He left there. He had a hard time in 1954. There was a trial for Nancy's brother, Theodore Roosevelt D'Alessandro, who was arrested along with a group of other, I want to say 11, but don't quote me on that, but I want to say 11 other young men. He was 19 at the time, and the two girls, these gentlemen were arrested for gang raping two young girls. One, I think they were both 13, maybe. So, anyways, they were very young girls. The other 11, or the other people that were arrested with him, were all found guilty. He got off. There doesn't seem to be any pulling of strings in this regard. He had a very good attorney. He used to be a judge, and he was a retired judge who took on this case, and apparently, got a change of venue, so on and so forth. And he got Franklin Roosevelt. Did I say Theodore before? I'm sorry. Franklin Roosevelt D'Alessandro off. He was later indicted on perjury for the rape charges case. They say he perjured himself in order to protect a friend of Big Tom's. There was some fixing going on, and again, I have a whole video or a whole slideshow that I want to get into, but this is really quick. It was Jack Pollock and a bunch of other people within the Baltimore machine, because that's how Democrat cities were run. They were run by the machine. You still hear about the Chicago machine, but back in the day, this was a thing, and this was an accepted, viable political system. You saw it mostly, like I said, it was Democrats. You saw them in Boston, the Kennedys, and Honey Fitz, Kennedy's grandfather. He worked off the political machine. The same thing with Chicago and with the dailies. Tommy was, one of the grandmasters in the machine in Baltimore. Anyways, Nancy was raised to see that they were part of the machine was ward bosses. Tommy was a ward boss. Jack Pollock for the Italians, Little Italy. Jack Pollock was for the Polish people, and so on and so forth. So there was these interactions, but the ward bosses got together and they worked stuff out, and whatever. There was some criminal undertones and so on and so forth, some mob connections and so on, but that wasn't really a big deal to Hoover, so that they didn't really Hoover didn't care about the mob. He didn't believe in the mob, some say. There's some speculation either way, but he really had to have it, driven home for him with the McClellan hearings in the 1951, which were some Senate mob hearings that traveled around the country. They didn't even touch Baltimore. So Baltimore wasn't even a thing. And Hoover, again, wasn't interested until the 60s, until Bobby sort of pushed it, Bobby Kennedy. Anyway, Nancy was raised to see people in these segmented neighborhoods. And then when she was older and she moved out to California, they settled in San Francisco, her and her husband. And she quickly she was a Democratic fundraiser. She was raised to do it. She was good at it. And she put that skill to work when she got out in California. She was a fundraiser, and then she worked her way up and became the first female DNC head in California, head of the DNC California. She had the convention brought to San Francisco in 84, I believe it was. And then by 87, she was running for Congress. Now, here's how Nancy came up. This is why Nancy doesn't care about the country, because Tim Pool was saying Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to seem like she doesn't care about the country. That's not it at all. Nancy doesn't care about that at all. Mm-mm. Nancy caters to her district, or her district in San Francisco. Nancy's district in San Francisco in the 80s, when she was elected, was particularly ravaged by AIDS. I mean, we all know AIDS hit the San Francisco gay community particularly hard, and as well as New York and other areas. But Nancy was a representative to those people. She fought for gay rights. She caters to her community. It's why she goes out and she says these things to the Chinese community. She doesn't care what we think about what she said to the Chinese community in terms of the coronavirus. She cares what they think is they're voting for her. She's willing to lose her majority in order to keep her seat. And Nancy Pelosi rules that Democrat Party with an iron fist. She's had some problems, and I have another video on this about Mean Girls with the AOC squad situation. Basically, they were the new Mean Girls on scene, and Nancy couldn't handle it. And I get into some analysis of that too. But I think it's important to understand Nancy Pelosi does not care about this country. Nancy Pelosi is one of the true representatives who rules the Democrat Party. I mean, she bends them to her will, man. And she's known them all. You got to remember, she was an intern with Elijah Cummings and Steny Hoyer when she was in college in congressional offices in D.C. She was an intern. So she's known these people forever. I mean, long before she ever ran for office. We're talking in the 50s and 60s. So she's known these people. She is a Washington insider through and through. She's worked her way. Her family is, I wouldn't say they're royalty. I would say that they're in the peerage, say earls level, not dukes, not princes, but earls maybe. So Nancy Pelosi, when she does these things, when she kneels, that's what her district expects her to see. And going back to coming up through the AIDS, she got Hollywood on board with this too. As head of the DNC, she lobbied hard with Hollywood. And you remember Elizabeth Taylor and Michael Jackson. And they did a lot with the AIDS community and Ryan White. A lot of that was orchestrated with Nancy Pelosi. She was involved in all of that. So there's that piece of it. And then when she got legislation passed to protect, she was part of the hate crime legislation because that's what her community wanted. So if we're looking to Nancy Pelosi to wake up or something, no, Nancy Pelosi's awake. We need to understand her motives. That's all. She is not somebody who's going to cater to the demands of America. She gets all, she doesn't care. She cares about San Francisco, and make no mistake, those people freaking love her. Nancy Pelosi's not going anywhere, folks. She's going to have to die in office. That's not a threat, I mean, of old age, because these people are all like, antiques. Joe Biden was in the Senate the year, was elected to the Senate, I believe it was, or he made those incredibly N-word racist remarks, the year I was born, 1973, also the year that Roe versus Wade happened, and the year that we started really pulling out of Vietnam. That gives you an idea of how long these people have been in office. I'm 47, for God's sake. Anyways, folks, I'm Angela. This was my mother issue for today, Nancy Pelosi's motives, and stick around. I've got more to come, as I mentioned. And my God, I'm so sorry about my hair. Have a good one, guys. Bye.